Hi, I'm Stephen with AlbertaUrbanGarden.ca. Gardening is not only a great source of enjoyment as a hobby for me, it's a great classroom for my son. But aside from these things, it's also a great way to save money. While I've invested in my garden this year, about this time of year it starts to pay me off in produce. So today I thought I would show you a couple of tips that I use to help me save money while gardening. The first, and likely the most obvious, is the money that you'll save by growing your own food. Every day now I go out into the garden to harvest what will become about half of my lunch, and the surplus is preserved for use later in the year. By harvesting half of my lunch, I estimate that I'm able to save between $5 to $10 a day between kind of middle of July all the way until middle of September. This represents what it would cost me to purchase my lunch while I'm at work. My weekly savings amount to about $25 to $50 a week, and conservatively, over a 10-week period, I'm able to save between $250 and $500, even in my small urban garden, in just the produce alone. If you would like to enhance the cost savings that your produce provide to you, or you simply have limited space, you can focus on crops that are either not available in your area or are very expensive to purchase at the store. In order for the plants in your garden to produce food for you, they themselves need nutrients. If you rely on store-bought products, that can be a continued cost to your garden. Over the last 2 years, I have evaluated a number of free and local resources for their fertilizer potential. These resources are either produced in your yard, such as autumn leaves, or in your kitchen, such as spent coffee grounds or used tea leaves. If used to make compost or mulch, they return their nutrients to the garden, fertilizing your plants for free. I've not needed to purchase any store-bought fertilizers for my garden over the last 3 years, saving me the cost of the fertilizer, and the free and local resources that I've used in the garden have been diverted from landfill. If you are just starting out, you can save money by filling your garden with compost made from these free and local resources instead of purchasing it from a garden center. Collecting rainwater is another great way to save some money. During the summer, if it is not raining enough, I may need to water my garden. Typically, when the garden needs supplemental water, prices jump as there is more demand on the municipal system. In past summers, I have noticed my bill increase by as much as $60 a month during drier weather, simply due to me watering my garden. These rain barrels have more than enough capacity to capture and store enough water for me to get through the drier times. If I have another dry summer like the summer of 2015, these rain barrels can save me up to $360 while reducing the likelihood that I will lose plants due to drought. If it has not been raining and your rain barrels are not full, you can recycle water from your kitchen, from things like washing vegetables, boiling water, and many other sources, and use it directly in the garden. Before you even get into the garden for the season, you can save money by saving seeds. Saving seeds and participating in seed swaps can build you a large library of seeds that often does not have to cost you very much, if anything at all. Once you have your seeds, you can often start your own seedlings for a fraction of the cost of purchasing them. If you have a south or southwest facing window, you can use the seeds that you've saved in the garden along with recycled containers filled with bulk potting soil to start your own seedlings, often at a cost of pennies. Seedlings in the garden store are not usually very expensive, but when you think of how many plants it takes to fill even my small garden, those savings can really add up. When I do go into a garden center, I do invest in perennials that will produce crops for me. I look for crops that I cannot find here or focus on the more costly crops that my family eats a lot. Perennials that produce crops are a great investment, as you only need to invest once, and the crops will produce often for decades, paying themselves off many times over. If you'd like to stretch your investment, you can propagate perennials. Propagation does not have to cost a lot, and there are even some perennials, such as this raspberry and strawberries, that self-propagate. If you give them the space, they'll produce massive crops for you with very little effort. Once you have your crops, you can increase their value by processing them into something that will cost you more at the grocery store. For instance, I will often take crops such as grapes, rhubarb, and surplus berries and make them into wine. You can also recover the value from crops that may not be fresh enough for other purposes, but are not quite rotting by turning them into wine. Each batch of wine costs me about $10 to make and yields 30 standard bottles of wine. At the store, each bottle of wine would cost a minimum of $10. By making these crops into wine, each batch increases the value of the crop by around $290. Initially setting up the garden is often the most expensive part about gardening. If I can, I like to use recycled lumber, like what I made this bed out of, or naturally sourced materials such as stone. When I do have to purchase materials for projects, I like to calculate before I do the project when it will pay me off in either produce or savings. The rain barrels, for instance, will pay themselves off in 1 year as soon as it's a drought condition. Whereas some of my other projects, such as some of my perennials that I've added to the garden, may take a few more years but eventually will pay themselves off. After this year, I'll be moving from the construction and expansion of my garden phase, which is the more expensive phase, to a maintenance phase. Each subsequent year from now on will be much cheaper in the investments I have to put in the garden, while the garden will continue to pay me back in produce and savings. In fact, the garden will increase how much it pays me back as my perennials mature and produce larger and larger crops. I would love to hear what your frugal gardening tips are that help you save money while gardening. If you enjoyed this video and would like to learn how to build amazing garden soil for free, check out the link on screen now, and make sure to subscribe so you can catch all future episodes.